All right, welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio. This is Heather Mason, NBDA President. This is the NBDA News Hour, co-hosted with our friends from Human Powered Solutions. Today, I am joined by micromobility experts, Mr. Jay Townley, Fred Clements, and Steve Bina. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Here. The team at Human Powered Solutions has over 245 years of experience, considered the data wizards. Their monthly newsletter, the Micromobility Reporter, is a dynamic resource for the industry featuring timely news, in-depth analysis about the latest human-powered transportation, including bicycles, e-scooters, and ride share. Our monthly news features focuses on the articles contained within this report, getting a more in-depth view and firsthand seat with the experts. I highly suggest you sign up to receive the email version of this resource at humanpoweredsolutions.com. Lots to get into, as always. The recent newsletter is titled The New Normal, Chaos Theory, and a Blow to Amazon. And I want to start it right with the Amazon article. Following the recent CPSC decision that categorizes Amazon as a distributor responsible for product safety, Human Powered Solutions team, what are your thoughts on how this ruling might impact bicycle retailers when it comes to compliance and product recalls? And just, I guess, the broader landscape of consumer public safety regulations in general. Jay, Fred, Steve?
Well, I'll kick it off. I think Steve Hansen, who is an attorney, well-known attorney in the industry, put it pretty succinctly that this is a wake-up call. Now, what occurred here is the CPSC vote, the decision followed a decision by an administrative law judge. So CPSC had taken Amazon into a judicial proceeding, and the administrative law judge said that Amazon was a distributor, which, by the way, it's distributor/retailer. So they have the same obligation now as the retailers and distributors in the bike business relative to product safety, recalls, responsibility for recalls. I think it's important for two reasons. One, now let's be clear here. Amazon's going to appeal this. There's going to be they're going to go to court. The chance of them winning at this point, I don't have odds on it. I'm just saying, until I see more about it, I'm guessing it's going to be 5050. But they're going to go in and plead the same thing they did before, which is they're not a distributor, they're not responsible. And what's happened in the marketplace is a growing dissatisfaction with the fact that and this primarily hits their third-party system. So what Amazon has got is a system, as you well know, that will sell electric bikes, lithium-ion batteries, and the seller gets on the website as they're just like they're renting space, and they do. They go to Walmart, or I'm sorry, they go to Amazon, and they rent or lease the warehouse space to put their products in the United States. And when they get an order, they send it to Walmart, or saying it again, Amazon, and Amazon releases it, ships it to the consumer, and the billing goes through the initial third-party seller. What's happened there is we've seen e-bikes and lithium-ion batteries that are below par, are in fact hazardous. And when it comes to CPSC trying to enforce any kind of hazardous substance or regulatory process, when these go bad and cause a problem, the brand or manufacturer disappears. They're primarily in China, and there's no way to follow it through. This is placing the responsibility on Amazon as it would on a bike shop or a distributor of a like product in the bike shop trade, because if we had that same issue where our manufacturer disappeared in China, CPSC would hold the retailer and or distributor, or both, responsible, the importer of record. So they are at this point making it abundantly clear, and I think here's where it fits the warning that Steve is talking about, which is this is a wake-up call for the industry, is the commission is serious.
Yeah.
The commission is serious about product safety, And you see the recalls all the time in Brain. You see them, through through the CPSC newsletter. Um, Responsible distributors and manufacturers, and in this case, out to retailers, have a clear understanding that they're responsible for the safety of the products, and they've got responsibilities under the Consumer Product Safety Act relative to getting those products out of the market if they cause a problem or potentially could cause a problem. Amazon has, I got it right that time. Amazon is avoiding that and creating more problems by doing it. And so this is finally putting the hammer down. Now, for the future, as I said, Amazon's going to appeal this in court. We'll see where the proceedings go. Uh, the political winds in this country will decide a great deal of whether CPSC gets funding, whether it grows as a regulatory agency. But if you go to law of probability at this point, back in August, if you'd asked me if CPSC would have continue its regulatory process and its growing regulatory process in the marketplace, I would have said, well, maybe not.
Hmm.
It's now we're moving on to October. Law
Yeah.
of probability says, yeah, you better not flaunt the law, and there is a chance, a good chance, that if you continue to try to duck your responsibilities relative to product safety, it's going to cost you.
Hmm. Yeah. It's good to see this update. I did think that they would, do what they could, Amazon, to fight against this. But when it comes
Yeah.
to the broad landscape right now at state or federal levels, anything we need to know that's happening when it comes to e-mobility, safety, storage, charging, or servicing?
Well, most of the activity is lithium-ion batteries and e-bikes,
Mhm.
and the bellwether states are New York and California. The California package of legislation has passed into law. There are now in California, in particular, a bunch of municipalities that have passed ordinances that are go beyond everything that New York or anything New York has done. Most of the uh, focus in the ordinance in the communities in California is because of riders, particularly young riders, teenagers on e-bikes that are simply violating the law.
Mhm.
Uh, even the law, the safe laws that were taught by the LAW relative to riding a bicycle, and it's gotten mayors and city council members all up in arms, justifiably so, because their constituency is complaining about not only the e-bikes getting in the way of motor vehicles, but pedestrians. People can't take a walk on some of these nice pathways that have been created for walking because of the e-bikes zipping by them. Um, and I mean, some of this is good, some of it's bad, some of it's over restrictive. It all boils down to what Mike keeps talking about, which is, well, now you pass the law, now you got to enforce it. And
Yeah.
so, the latest thing I saw was an ordinance in a municipality, I think Fountain Valley, Fred, where now an e-bike rider has to go to the police department and take a course administered by the police with the parents present, and they're going to give them a permit. And they expect the city council expects the police now to enforce the law, make sure that these kids cannot ride, e-bikes this way anymore. It's dangerous. Well, the police have been challenged in many, many ways, but my sympathy to them, because they've got an awful lot to do. And enforcing e-bike regulation, I don't think is going to be rise to the top of the issues that they're facing. So the enforcement issues are certainly, will they enforce it? The other is it enforceable? Is it too restrictive?
Right.
So, Heather, there's a whole now at this point, I think a whole movement down at the local level that we have to be very mindful of and careful of. And at the upper side, moving up the chain, you've got state governments. New York and California will be copied. New Jersey, as you and I know, have heard,
Yeah.
New Jersey's in the process of putting a package of bills together.
Yeah. Chicago
Um,
suburb. Yeah. Hmm.
Chicago, San Francisco. So you're going to see more of this. The problem it's going to create, as I've said before, is preemption. It
Mhm.
will be the issue of CPSC. Now, a lot of probability here. Is CPSC going to finally come out with a mandatory federal reg that covers bicycles and e-bikes? Well, it's their intention to do that by the end of 2025. And at that point in time, they'll have to decide if they in turn litigate the states or go after the states first, and then litigate relative to the federal regulation being the superior of the regulations and would be enforced relative to the state law. You'd follow the CPSC reg as opposed to the state law, or there would be certain features of state laws that would be superior. This is going to take a great confusing situation by 2025 and probably make it more confusing.
Mhm.
And then in turn, it'll settle in. But we're not going to see this settle down to clarity for retailers and or distributors and manufacturers and brands till about 2026, maybe 2027.
Yeah. And again, for our listeners, why it's so important, why does the NBDA keep talking about this? Why do we continue to advocate for safety? E-bike sales are thriving. They're continuing to be a growing category for our retailers. They're an important part of the business of our industry. And we need to make sure that our consumers are safe and feel comfortable purchasing and bringing these products into their homes. So appreciate that update, Jay. Let's move on. Steve, very glad to have you here. I saw your recent published paper was, what is your most valuable asset? So that question, really interesting article, noting the value of retailers' data. And it mentioned hackers that are out there, those bad, awful people, protection that we can do. And it just, could you give our listeners a summary just of this article? Because there's some really great stuff in here, Steve.
Thank you, Heather. I wrote a series of articles a while back for the Micromobility Reporter about data and how dealers can look at their data, how they might be able to protect their data. This particular article actually came to me at the NBDA retailer conference in Bentonville. I was actually sitting at a table having a conversation with one of your dealers who was going through the process of looking at getting some software to protect his data. And it came to his attention that I've got a background in the software industry and data protection. So we started having this conversation. And the questions that I put into the article that I wrote, in fact, were questions that I asked him. And as I noted, the answers that he gave me back really didn't surprise me. And I'm not trying to be disingenuous to this gentleman. He just really wasn't sure about some of the things that I was asking him about. Mm-hmm. That said, when we got into it and I did some more research down the line, talked about hacking. Does hacking still occur? Some of the research that I did, particularly here in Tennessee where I'm located, came back and said, yeah, absolutely, it still does. And in fact, almost 50% of the businesses in Tennessee over the last couple of years have in fact reported at least a hacking attempt.
Oh, wow.
So it still happens. And the reason for it is twofold. One, the bad actors sometimes are looking to get control of your data and then ransom it back to you to get some money, or they're looking for information that they then can monetize and sell on the dark web and create all kinds of problems for individuals. And so you just need to be mindful that it still happens.
Yeah.
Now, your dealers, Heather, may think, I'm a small business. There really isn't anything here of a real monetary value that a hacker could want. Well, again, that's not always true. And the reason for that, again, another study that I looked at that was done by Accenture said that 43% of all hacking attacks were done on small businesses. Why would they do that? Primarily because they're typically. I'm sorry?
I was thinking because they don't think it's going to happen to them, so they don't protect their data.
Exactly. They are the most vulnerable. And so it's important that your membership understand that just because they may not be a big business in comparison to these big major multinational companies, they may be big enough to be interesting to a hacker. And of course, once they do that, once they hack and they get inside, they also have a pretty good idea of what your membership can afford to pay to get their data back.
Mhm.
One of the really scary things that I saw in my research was that the average ransom that gets paid to a hacker is $3 million.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and the reality is that would never fly with any of your membership, right? But as I put in this article, what happens if the demand is $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000? So the key here is be mindful, understand what your data represents, and take steps to protect that data. And what can some of those steps be? Make sure your passwords are secure. Make sure that your employees are not sharing passwords. Hang on a second. They're not sharing passwords. That you, if you have a data breach, that you report it. And there's a whole other group of things that they can do that I don't want to take up too much time here, but if they have any questions, they can certainly email me through the Human Powered Solutions website, and I'll be happy to help them address that. One of the other scary things that shows up in the research that I did is that only 14% of small businesses are set up to actually protect themselves from a hack.
Mhm.
And half said they're not doing any testing of their employees to make sure the employees are doing what they need to do to keep their data safe. So it's a continuing process. It's a continuing part of the business that unfortunately many times just gets overlooked.
Yeah, and it's a real problem. So I'm glad that you did bring that up. Something really important for our listeners to think about. And Steve, we will pass along your contact should anyone want to ask more questions.
Absolutely. Happy to help where I can, Heather.
Back to the reporter, the article about Chipotle and McDonald's. It says that consumer slowdown is happening. And the article highlighted the contrasting fortunes of those two fast food giants, but also suggested how both restaurants with their unique customer base are altering the menu, pricing, and quantity of the food. I think when I go to Chipotle, I spend $8 on something and it's actually 2 meals. And this adjustment is an attempt to cater to their customers. Is there anything that the bicycle industry could learn from these two food giants when it comes to adjusting our prices, quality, our service we provide? I don't know, Jay, Fred?
Well, I'll hit a couple of things and then turn it over to Fred. One is that what I got out of the Chipotle side of this is value.
Mm.
The whole point that you remember the wrap up to the article. Now, this was in an English publication, a British publication. So this is the Brits looking at the American side of retail, but with their reporters in this country being the ones that contributed the information. But the Chipotle side of it was when they skimped a little bit on what had been portions, they got a lot of pushback from customers and they immediately went back to the way they did it, but at the same time, value pricing.
Mhm.
So it's very carefully, and this goes back to what we did yesterday with the cost doing business study, is make sure that you're maintaining margin, but look at how you could provide value and then advertise and promote that to your consumer. The McDonald's side was a little more of a mixed bag, but the wrap up there was that that reporter that was at McDonald's got a lower cost meal, but the French fries were over salted. And he threw most of it away. You remember? He didn't
Mhm.
finish it.
Yep.
That goes to quality. We go to Chipotle and McDonald's with the expectation of getting what? Uniform quality.
Yep.
And when that drops below what we expect, then people will badmouth us on the internet and not go. They'll make another choice. So I think that's a really strong message that dealers and their training processes and their associates have to be trained so that they are giving the best possible service they can give every day to every customer. Because today, word of mouth is much stronger than it's ever been because of the internet. Back in the day, you had to spread it by talking to people. Today, you don't. You type out an email and send it to your list or to your followers, or you put it on Facebook, and you can then get the message, good or bad, out to literally hundreds to thousands of people all at one time. So
Mhm.
those are the two messages I took away from the two articles, that consumers are really interested in value today. And that's repeated, by the way, in the Walmart articles that were also in the newsletter, or the articles about Walmart.
Mhm.
Walmart in particular, its competitor Target, where Walmart has represented a greater value in the market, value for price paid. And the other is maintain your quality. And that's in quality and service as well as product. Fred, your thoughts on that?
Uh, well, I agree with what you said, of course. One of the things I appreciate about the bicycle industry is the diversity among retailers. And
Mhm.
that's something that McDonald's doesn't have between its franchises, or Chipotle between theirs. We have everything from service only $100,000 a year gross sales up to 10, 15 million or more a year, completely different worlds. And so what is the consumer to make of us? In what way are we an industry, or are we just a collection of very different and distinct independent businesses? So I think, first, what do you want to be as a retailer? What kind of audience do you want to serve? Um, of course, quality and value is always going to be in play, but I don't think we'll ever be able to offer to the consumer a seamless, all-in-one kind of franchise look, because we are so, as the consumer base is so diverse. And so you pick what you want to be and how you want to be it. I may have mentioned this before, but I had a longtime NBDA member when I worked there, who opened up a shop near me. He was within a mile of the beach, but he was, by golly, going to be a mountain bike store. He loved mountain bikes. He's going to be a mountain bike store. He realized about a year and a half in that people aren't buying mountain bikes from a store right next to the beach. They wanted cruisers. And
Mhm.
so he changed, and he became quite successful selling cruisers because he listened to his market, gave them the value and the niche that they were looking for. And so I think that's a key for our industry, is adaptability, to be tuned into what your consumer base wants and to be able to be flexible enough to give it to them for what they want, not for what you want to sell.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. There's some good reminders here. And yeah, it's interesting when we think about, fast food, but there is things that we can learn from these two giants. They do a good job. They've been around for many years. Um, it makes me think about just the economic times, because consumers slow down. And Steve, you report on economic status often. I think back in March, I think this year, you suggested asking retailers if they were ready for the coming season, and you gave advice on cash flow, credit lines, insurance, operating hours. Just in your opinion, how is it looking out there right now for businesses in general? And any advice to retailers as we, look into this off season fast approaching?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up in the off season, because the next article that I've written and I've submitted to Jay and Fred for their input. And you'll notice with these things, I kind of give them titles. The titles of the next article is Winter is Coming.
Mm.
And it talks about exactly some of those things and the perils that the off season can bring. The good news is there has been some relief started now that the Fed has reduced the short-term interest rates by 0.5 point. How long it's going to take for that to drift down and be helpful to the dealer with his borrowing remains to be seen, and what the real impact on that will be to individual consumers. Again, everything that I've written up to this point pretty much holds fast. The reduction in the interest rates, watching your cash flow, people continue to feel nervous. I went to the grocery store the other day. I paid $4 for a dozen eggs. So all of that continues to weigh on people. And so, as Jay and Fred were just talking about value to their consumers, it's one of the things that is probably going to help those bike dealers that can prove and deliver a value to their customers. Those that are struggling with that are probably going to continue to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how your same tips hold true. And we've been really pushing just understanding your financials, making goals, sharing your goals with your team, we've had the same consistent message to retailers. And it is really it is time to hunker down and look at those financials and have a good plan forward. Rick Vosper, love Rick Vosper. His recent article in Brain was titled, "The New Normal is a lot more normal than you think it is." I like the title. The article discusses the current complexities of the bicycle retail market. It covers inventory challenges and this consumer behavior post-pandemic. The big picture is the industry is struggling, and there's two main problems: too much inventory dollars at the suppliers, combined with a shortage of models that are in demand with retailers, and then not enough customers for those overstocked bikes at retail. Yeah, how do bicycle retailers navigate this mixed market reality? How do we thrive in this new normal? Come on, guys.
Well,
You have all the answers, right? Come on.
I think first of all, Rick, and as I stated in the response to his article or the analysis of his article, Rick is looking at the specialty bike retail business and quite accurately that segment. But I think what we've seen, or at least what Human Powered Solutions has seen, is the channels of trade have shifted, and their size and scope and their importance to the marketplace and to the retailers themselves has changed. The big change is D2C as a pure play has grown. And I'm not sure to what point it has. I mean, we're going to have to work on the way to survey that and get data in to be able to pin it down. And I'm not talking about the omni channels, the retailers that have commerce-enabled websites. I'm talking about the pure plays that are only on the web, only do retail on the web, only sell to consumers via the web, virtually, and with websites as their primary marketing tool. So the the whole issue here is the change in the consumer, being able to track the change in the consumer, understanding also what it's going to take as we move through, and we mentioned the value proposition, what it's going to take to deal with what is the new consumer. I basically saying there is no normal. The consumer is ever changing at this point. The consumer has changed in the last 3 months. There's been shifts to, and we're going to talk, I think, a little bit about the fact that young people aren't getting driver's licenses anymore. The percentage of 17, 18-year-olds with driver's licenses has dropped like a rock. Yet when I was in high school, man, you had to have a driver's license. And many kids my age, high school age, 16, 17, 18, once they got a driver's license, they got a car. Not a bicycle, but a car. Now remember, I graduated from high school in 1961, so a lot of things have changed in between. But the value proposition and what the consumer values has changed appreciably from the COVID, and through the pandemic. So I think Rick is right on with what probably is a smaller channel, not much so, but smaller, from the standpoint of bicycles. And then you add e-bikes into the equation and try to figure out what role that's playing in the market. As you and I saw yesterday, looking at the cost of doing business, e-bikes are not generating the gross profit or the margin that we kind of thought they were, or at least they were promised. They're sub 30% as to the realized margins that are coming out of the trade. So there's work to do here to build up the value of product in the market. We've pushed it down. We've gone into sales. Retailers have had to accept some of the sale pricing. So I think that it's a multifaceted question that's going to require rethinking how you gather consumer information, how you use it, and how you keep in contact with that consumer who's going to change, going to evolve. And what it means, as Steve said, to your business. Fred touched on this too. what is your value proposition for the month of October coming up, and do all the work you have to do to make sure you understand what it has to be in November and December and how you're going to compete, because you can. You just have attributes, you have value, you have things that you do as a specialty retailer that other people can't do. So I thought Rick's article was very good, but I pointed out it's one channel of trade out of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And those channels of trade have shifted, changed, and bear different levels of importance now in the marketplace than they did 2019, 2020.
Lots to think about. Rick always does a great job, and his articles get us all thinking and talking. So I appreciate your analysis on them. Let's go over to the growing awareness of the DOT rules and regulations regarding the shipping of lithium-ion batteries by sea, air, or truck. This article on the port of, is it Ningbo explosion? And I know in our recent e-bike panel discussion, we had a retailer presenting about a DOT visit. So any retailers that are shipping lithium-ion batteries, what do we need to be aware of?
Well, first of all, only use the certified shippers that have been have been tested and certified both by DOT and OSHA. And if a dealer is big enough where you're going to be, as an example, shipping an e-bike for a customer, because that's commonly done, shipping a bike, realize you got to remove the lithium-ion battery, make sure it's down to 30% or less in charge, and then in turn, get yourself tested and licensed so that you can package it. Or make very sure that you're getting the right people from either UPS, FedEx, or the airlines you're using that are certified to do that packaging as required by law. So that, and the fact that DOT is now like CPSC. Now, the agency in DOT that we're talking about is NHTSA. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is part of DOT, not separate. So DOT is inclusive of NHTSA, and that's come up in the news a couple of times in the past 30 days because they, like CPSC, are getting more active. And so I think we're headed toward two things. I think we're going to have to prepare a position paper for dealers so they understand. And I do think this is going to be should be the subject of a webinar.
Yeah, we've placed some resources on the NBDA website in our member resources section. So you'll have to log into your NBDA account if you are an NBDA member. In there, you can find a PowerPoint presentation from a retailer who was recently inspected, who gives her feedback, along with some other links to some documents that may be helpful. So do know that that is there, and it's something that if you are shipping lithium-ion batteries, we do want to make sure that you are aware of what you need to have on file in case of an inspection. Let's keep moving here. Great Bloomberg article mentioning Walmart and their outlook switch as shoppers are looking for bargains. It seems that Walmart's strategy has changed as consumer habits are changing, and consumers tend to be looking now for value seeking and looking only to purchase essential items. Gosh, as bicycle retailers, I think this is important to know. If Walmart is sensing something, maybe we should be adapting our strategy as well. Perhaps leveraging our offering, used bikes. What do we do to attract consumers looking for both variety and value? I think I'm going to ask Fred this one. Fred, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. I'm going to ask you.
Okay, well, I think, from my perspective, the dynamics are the same for the retailer if they're doing what I think needs to be done in an era where there is no normal, as Jay said. To remain flexible, remain connected with your consumer base, and look for niches that you may not be currently serving that may represent opportunity for you, such as Heather, you mentioned used bikes, and I've always been a big believer in little surprises. I think we had a seminar presenter bring it up once that if a retailer wants to give a consumer a great experience, of course you train staff, you have a great store and all that, but are they going to run into something they didn't expect? Um, I think that's attractive in itself, where you run across something that you didn't expect to see there. I remember, Beth Annan up in Davis when she was running a bike store had a whole wall of just what I would call junk, but it's stuff, little squeezy bells, and that was the highest margin area of her whole store, and it took up very little space. Just little surprising, interesting, weird things that a consumer wouldn't expect to see, and but they did. And so I think there's something to be said for that too, just in terms of making your store interesting to be in. And part of it's the merchandise that you carry, and can you surprise somebody with something they hadn't expected to see?
I like that. Anyone else? Jay, you have any thoughts on this or?
Well, I think you hit on it as far as I'm concerned, because we'll keep covering it. I think we need to make sure we bring forward and let dealers see what Walmart's doing, what we're finding out about Walmart's strategy, because they don't hide it. So within a short period of time after they're doing something, we've got several sources, publications we tap into regularly that are writing about Walmart, what Walmart is doing. Because right now they are the most in tuned. They're spending the resources to become very aware of everything that's occurring relative to their shoppers. And they do that because they've got data. Their stores are generating data. The data goes into a central database, and they analyze it on a regular basis. So they're, it's not a matter of just we think, they know.
Yeah.
And they're positive about it, because a lot of what we write about, you'll note, is when their president or the vice presidents or the CEOs or the CFOs of their organization are giving a stockholders meeting or are talking to reporters about their stock.
Yeah.
So they're very forthright. And I think that we need to take responsibility for getting that out. And I think dealers in turn have to understand that when they see Walmart in a news article, read it, particularly if we're doing the analysis on it, because we're trying to point out to specialty bike retailers, their suppliers, the retailers themselves, exactly why that's important.
Yeah.
Because Walmart is spending a lot of money figuring out who their consumer is, and they can tell you month to month, as we put in articles, when, because they track, by the way, the household income of their shoppers. So that's one of the data points they get when they collect additional data. And so you remember in one of our newsletters about 2-3 months ago, we pointed out that what came out of the Walmart data is they were finding that higher income shoppers were coming into their stores more often, buying their products because it was value based. Well, again, that's an important piece to remember, because that higher income consumer has been the middle market, or the I guess the sustaining market for bike shops. They're the ones that were buying the $14,000, $15,000 bikes.
Yeah.
So I think part of the responsibility here is on us collectively, NBDA as well as Human Powered Solutions, to make sure that we're doing a better job of analyzing this. And then what you've already started, you're doing consumer research. You just put a press release out last week or this week.
Yep.
That's extreme. You know that I'm a great advocate of consumer research, an extremely important project where you're getting information from consumers that's current, that in turn can be analyzed and put into the shops, so shops can read it and understand at least what we're seeing in the overview. And then, as Fred said, take that down to your local level. Find out what is pertinent to your local level, to your demographics. I don't like, particularly as a research tool, I don't like focus groups, but I do advocate that dealers have focus groups. Get a cross section of consumers in, a dozen or more. Buy them a beer, buy them a coffee, whatever. Set them down, give them a coupon to shop, but set them down as a group and have a conversation with them. And part of that conversation is find out where their head is today. What are they buying today? What are they looking to you for? What kind of service do they want? what's their income problem? They won't go into detail, but you can ask a general question: is inflation hurting you?
Mhm.
Has the recent cut, as Steve said, has the recent cut the Fed made trickled down to you yet? Are you feeling this? Find out the things that a retailer needs to know. And I think Fred's also correct that yeah, we're different as shops, we're different as organizations, but the commonality is the consumer.
Yeah,
And go
sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say
Nope.
it's a great suggestion to do a local focus group. I think we're making assumptions based on everything we're hearing right now. The consumer spending is down. I mean, there's actually data that supports that. And I think I have to assume that the political side of things is not helping. And I think there was an article on consumer sentiment, which is a statistical measurement of how consumers feel about their finances and the economy. And it can be an indicator, and that is, it's used to predict the future, and that is like down. And I think Human Powered Solutions also feels that perhaps the impact of some political developments is setting this tone. So I think as bicycle retail, as our audience, our listenership base here, we need to be aware that this is potentially we're gonna continue to see this softening, right?
Well, it's both softening economically and also you mentioned the combinations of consumer sentiment. One of the things that's looked at here is consumer sentiment has gone up and down, go up and down by month. So you got to look at the events that are driving it. But when you dig a little deeper in some of the additional indices that are looked at by the organizations like National Retail Federation in the consumer sentiment equation, one of the things that's definitely been a plus is the political situation. In that, politics changed, who's running for president changed,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden there was a major change in the mindset of younger people. And that's been reflected, some of it in their attitudes, and some of that attitude is reflected in the way they're buying. So it's not huge, but those things do work their way through. They're waves that work their way through the different behaviors. And there again, I think we've got to take responsibility for pointing those things out. Dealers, in turn, have to take responsibility for reading it. And in turn, if we've got important messages, we have to make sure we find ways that we can communicate that to the dealer channel of trade so that they are seeing the bits and pieces they need to see to adjust their business plans.
Yeah.
I would say that I would take any consumer sentiment survey with a large grain of salt during an election year like this one, where the presidency is the candidates are so different, and it would only make sense to be a little unsure until this is over as to what our future is as a country. You know, when you hear talk about tariffs on all imported goods, for instance, of course, our industry has had tariffs for a long time in bicycles, but every imported good tariff, boy, that's going to make me a little uncertain as a consumer. How about deportation of 11 million people who are part of the economy now? I mean, these are very potentially disruptive issues. I don't want to get into the politics too much, but I think that we're, a month or two away from having any meaningful consumer sentiment number because it's just so unknown at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's correct. I would only point out that the examples that you gave of issues, there are many people that are in that consumer, and this goes to your point, this consumer sentiment survey that don't look at that, don't understand it, aren't aware of it. And that is part of the problem. So yeah, consumer sentiment has to be taken with a grain of salt. Economists use it sparingly. And I think it has to always be used in combination with these other factors and these other data points and information that's coming in. In other words, use it carefully.
Yeah. This next article here, I mean, as a mom of a 16-year-old, gonna be 17-year-old, this article is fewer teens want to drive. The article from Wall Street Journal discusses the decline in teen driving and its implications for consumer behavior. Human Powered Solutions kind of highlights the demographic shifts and maybe there's a hope here for more kids on bikes. Thoughts here? Yeah, I mean, my daughter's all about driving right now, but I gotta trust the Wall Street Journal. So,
Well, it isn't 100%. It's but the percentages have gone up, and it's I don't know. I've seen this personally in my
yeah.
youngest granddaughter, and also my oldest granddaughter, which I mentioned in the article. Neither one of them, were particularly interested in getting driver's licenses. The oldest granddaughter drives now, but she didn't get a driver's license till she got married.
Mhm.
And so, it's and my youngest granddaughter has a boyfriend who didn't drive, didn't have a driver's license until just recently. He had no interest in driving. He was always able to work with his friends and figure out how to get a ride. So I've talked to them about this too. And as the article points out, the Wall Street Journal points out, some of this is economic, but a lot of it has to do with what younger people look at as wanting to own or not owning. And the younger people are driving the circular economy.
Mhm.
I mean, I just saw a number the other day that they expect the circular economy in the clothing industry, fashion, clothing, to hit $43 billion this year.
Wow.
And all of the major fashion houses and the name brand clothiers are into the circular economy. They've got used goods, particularly the online people, previously owned. I mean, they've got clever ways of dealing with it. Stanley has joined us, by the way. The circular economy is indicative of what the younger generation feels is important. I
Mhm.
think this is why also, despite the news that we just heard today, where the Pros Closet is closing down in October,
Yeah.
um, used bicycles are popular. E-bikes are still popular. There, to my count, are still there's one going down. There's still 4 very active online sellers of used bicycles and used e-bikes. Dealers, as I said yesterday, when we were looking at cost of business, need to get into the circular economy, and that's being driven by demographics. It's being driven by the same young people that don't want a driver's license.
Yeah.
And so this is a movement that goes beyond just driver's licenses. To answer your question, yeah, I think it's going to put more young people on bikes and e-bikes. And I think dealers need to get ahead of that by doing what you've already advocated. And we heard at your conference, the retail conference, where there was some very passionate pleas for dealers to change the way they sell 20-inch and 16-inch wheel bikes. You might recall there was one, I think, very telling presentation where the end result was take off the training wheels.
Take off the
I don't
training.
want to go into the detail. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't want to get into the hows and whys of that, but I was in the retail business and sold a lot of bikes with a lot of Schwinn Pixies with training wheels. But the argument that's made for taking the training wheels off and why that's a good thing to get more kids on bikes makes eminent sense. So I think we need to get out there and maybe stretch the envelope and just plain get more kids on bikes. And I think this movement will help.
It's
I
interesting.
would
Yeah,
go ahead.
Brett.
I was just going to say that I think it really, I mean, because if we assume that trend of younger people not getting driver's licenses as often or not being interested in their own motor vehicle, they're going to have to get around somehow.
Mhm.
And bicycles and e-bikes are how they're doing that around here, anyway. And it really, to me, it really adds the pressure on us as an industry to get our act together. I mean, if maybe this Amazon thing will shut down some of that China stuff that we previously discussed from Amazon, the ruling that they too are in the line of liability and of safety recalls and all of that, because we've thought for long, I've always thought, oh yeah, the cheap e-bikes and lithium, they come from China. We can't do anything about it. Well, they don't just come from China. They come from China through Amazon. And if that can be a choke point, we don't have to worry about de minimis reform anymore because all that stuff will be stopped or at least improved to save their own businesses. Amazon will have to react. And so I think we're still in this transition where we do not have our act together. We're not selling reliably safe product, but if we're going to get kids on bikes and e-bikes more, we're going to have to do a better job of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge growth opportunity for our industry, and I'm glad to see Buddy Pegs, Project Bike Tech. There's a lot of organizations, NICA, who we have a webinar with next month, continuing to do the work there. Interesting times. I mean, it's been, I feel like every month there's something to talk about. One more question, and then we're going to close it down. Taichung Bike Week, Bike Europe announced, the annual event for product managers is going on now, September 24th through 27th. There's some challenges surrounding the event, particularly when it comes to inventory levels and sourcing for 2026 and 27. Any insights you can share?
Well, I think that outside of the industry, Taichung Bike Week has not been widely publicized. In other words, insiders know all about it.
Mhm.
It during the COVID suffered. It was the insider event because the timing of it. It's a fall event, and from a timing standpoint, and Steve will remember this well. Schwinn, we traveled multi-discipline teams, buying teams, and we intensified those trips when we got toward the end of the year because that's when you lock down the line and you do your final planning and when you give the vendor the forecasting for the first quarter. And so Taichung Bike Week turned into the way that was done. That was also coupled with the fact that more of the buyers set up offices with full-time European, American, Canadian employees in those offices. Younger people were much more interested in going to Taiwan and living in Taiwan or China and manning those offices and being the representatives of the companies than they were in my time or Steve's time, because we were just getting started with that. So we spent more time on airplanes. The Taichung Bike Week, though, is reflective of the market. And so what that article was saying was that if you look through the detail of it, I would have loved to have talked to them more about that, was that essentially it's not over. The problems we've got, as we know, are going to continue through 2024, and they probably won't be resolved till 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And the article about Taichung Bike Week confirms that. And it's the place to go to confirm it. It is not a show per se. It's called a hotel show because it's held in multiple hotels. And what you do is you find out what room, suite, or conference room a particular brand is in. And obviously, a Shimano has a big conference room that they rent for the period. And a small supplier would have possibly a room or a conference room, but they're all different sizes and types. But what they'll show you is what they're going to make and what they're planning to make. They want your opinion about they want to talk to a buyer and find out what the opinion is about it. We're going to do this. They haul it out from the back of the closet. But they're going to let you know what they are going to make too, so that you can be pretty sure what you can put on your line, what you could spec with your OEM. And the other key to that is that if you go to Taichung Bike Week, Taichung is the epicenter of the bike industry, like it or not. The only place that's similar to that would be Europe, and it's only similar. China's got a lot of OEMs, a lot of manufacturing, and they put on big trade shows, but there's no place where you get together with buyers, being able to sit down in private rooms with sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went into a little bit of what that's all about. So Taichung Bike Week is still important. It isn't, to me, it's indicative of where the industry is going. And it's a place where you can draw intelligence for what's going to occur in the coming year. And as I said, it boils down to what we are hearing, which is it isn't over till it's over.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yogi Berra. It isn't over till it's over. And at this point, we're not going to see any appreciable relief in the market until 2025. Based on the discussion we've just had, we also have to be aware that we've trained consumers to a particular way of buying bicycles through 2024. And so now as we get to 2026 through 2025, we're going to have to look at very carefully, watch on a regular basis what's happening with the consumer, because we're going to want to change their buying habits and their buying behaviors as well.
Yeah.
And to Fred's point, the way we're ultimately going to make that work for us, we got to get our act together, because we do not have, as an industry, we're not even close to having our act together.
There's a lot there. I don't think anyone listening wants to hear that this is going to continue forward for 25, 26, 27, but there will be some highlights, and we'll navigate the lowlights. So much in the Micromobility Reporter. Listeners, I'm only just touching on it. Head over to humanpoweredsolutions.com to sign up for your own copy. Specific advice for listeners for October 2024. Fred, focus for retailers.
Well, this was the time of year when there was something that many will remember and many probably not, because it's been some time now, but Interbike happened around this time of year. And I remember Interbike well, having gone to 27 of them or so, that I would talk to retailers and retailers to us and me and the NBDA. And the thing that they got most out of Interbike, yes, they saw product and they interact with the supply side. It was an opportunity to interact with their peers. It was sitting down at lunch with another bike shop who was a non-competitor. I had dealers joining the NBDA board. They told me after they left the board after years of service, I just wanted to be in the same room with Chris Cagle and Jay Graves. I wanted to be with my peers because that's how I learned. And without there an Interbike, it's not as easy to do. And so my thought this time of year just brought it to mind. Find some way to reach out and reestablish some kind of connection with your peers, whether it be the NBDA P2 project, whether it be Jim Kirsten's cab to shows, whatever it is, even online, Vosper's cycling recovery group, to be engaged, to work with the association if you feel it's appropriate, and I think it is, to have a broader base of input into your questions, your needs, and talking to your peers. There's nothing like it. And Interbike's a missed opportunity for that in some ways, but I think you can replicate a lot of that. And I think it's an important thing that we still have those opportunities. So, yeah.
So much value when it comes to peer learning, and our P2 groups are growing, more retailers taking part, and we're really working closely to help retailers best position their business. Jay, when it comes to suppliers for October?
I think pretty much the same advice I've given in at least 3 or 4 of the previous podcasts. I think the supplier community has to look very carefully at being honest with specialty bike retailers, or the retailers they do business with, making sure that they're sharing forecasting, making sure that they're sharing the reality of how their business is operating, what they can do, what they can't do, and above all, from the product safety standpoint, making sure that they are providing the safest possible product, and making sure they work with all of their sellers to provide the best level of safety for the consumer. And as electric bikes are coming into the market and becoming an important product category, that's more complex. And so I think that's up to the suppliers to make sure that they're getting the certificates of compliance, doing the proper testing. This goes for the regular pedal bikes as well, because I do think that part of what's occurred here and not having our act together is there's a lot of bikes that simply aren't tested.
Mm-hmm.
And they should be. They should be providing to specialty retailers the testing certificates of compliance. And if I've said that and I'm in error, please let me know, because I'd rather know who has the certificates and who's doing the testing. And I think the last part of this is also working with retailers to give them a fair chance to make a fair profit in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Think through your business plan, and if you're going your way to do your job to make your profit for your company, do that, but try to do it in a way that doesn't harm the retailers, gives the retailers a chance to make a fair profit for their business, and for them to be in the marketplace for you. And we've already seen several D2C brands in the past month that have said, we're going to go with retailers, we're going to put retailers into our mix.
Yep.
We have to work with retailers. So it's to the advantage of every one of these manufacturers and brands to make sure that the retail channel is as healthy as it possibly can be, particularly the specialty retail channel where we do the repair and the service.
Excellent, excellent advice, Jay. Steve, overall focus for retailers when it comes to finances?
Well, and I've said this before too, to kind of echo what Jay was after. Hopefully every one of your dealers has a business plan, Heather. And the time now is to see where you are relative to that business plan, make changes if needed, and probably start planning for the next year as well. What's working, what isn't working. You don't just blindly keep going down a path if it isn't working for you. Figure out what you have to change and make that change. And that could be store hours, that could be number of employees, that could be the product that you're handling. Don't just assume that everything's going to turn out all right. Make the plan and change it. And Jay, you talked about Yogi Berra. He had a saying that says the plan isn't the key, the planning process is.
Yes, I like that, Steve. I like that. Such a wealth of information. Thank you enough. I can't thank you enough. You guys are absolutely amazing. Such a wealth of expertise. Again, our listeners are able to stay up to date and have a good seat with the firsthand experts on the important topics facing our industry. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Heather. Bye.